Richard Satchwell has been found guilty of murdering his wife Tina at their home in Youghal, County Cork in 2017. After a trial lasting just over 4 weeks, the jury at the Central Criminal Court took almost 9.5 hours to find Mr Satchwell guilty of murder.
Tina Satchwell's family burst into tears as the jury's verdict was announced. Richard Satchwell showed no emotion. The portrait he had painted of his wife as a violent, volatile woman who attacked him regularly was not recognised by those who knew Tina and loved her.
During this trial, Tina was portrayed in a way that is not true to who she was. Tina was our precious sister, cousin, auntie and daughter. Her presence in our life meant so much to us all. We as a family can never put into words the impact of her loss that has had on all of us. Tina was a kind, loving, gentle soul who loved her animals like they loved her, and that's the way we want her remembered. Today, as a family, we finally have justice for Tina. In this time, our family would like to ask for privacy to begin our healing.
Sarah Howard travelled to give evidence in the case despite having given birth 2 weeks previously. She and Ms Satchwell's sister Lorraine thanked those who found Tina and got justice for their family. Satchwell had reported his wife missing on March the 24th, 2017, saying she had left home 4 days previously, taking their savings with her. For more than 6.5 years, he persisted with this lie in a manner the prosecution described as shamelessly brazen. It was only when Gardaí dug up his sitting room and found Tina's partially decomposed remains in a grave under the stairs that he changed his story. He claimed she attacked him with a chisel, that he fell backwards and she died as he tried to hold her off using the belt of her dressing gown. He told Gardaí it was all a blur. It was an account described as farcical and self-serving by the prosecution, who said he murdered his wife because she threatened to leave him. The jury deliberated for 9 hours and 28 minutes. They didn't believe Satchwell was acting in self-defence. They believed he intended to kill or cause serious injury to his wife.
Thank you.
He'll be sentenced next week to life in prison, when victim impact evidence will also be heard.
The conviction of Richard Satchwell for the murder of his wife Tina comes more than 8 years after he first reported her missing. Our Southern editor Pascal Sheehy looks back on the many twists and turns that have marked that agonising time for her family.
On March 24, 2017, Richard Satchwell told Gardaí his wife Tina had disappeared from their Grattan Street home in Youghal 4 days earlier. The delay in filing the missing persons report was enough to give rise to suspicion. In the months that followed, Gardaí conducted several searches, including at Richard and Tina Satchwell's home and along the waterfront in Youghal.
To me, she's the most amazing person that I've ever come across.
During this time, Richard Satchwell remained uber available to the media.
I'm just getting more and more worried. I find it more difficult to sleep. I'm losing weight with worry, struggling to eat. And I just know somebody out there has to know something.
His interview on RTE's Crime Call was particularly memorable.
Tina, come home. There's nobody mad at you. My arms are open. It's killing me, Tina, love. Please.
Real animal lover and a real fashion lover was how I described Tina.
It was a difficult time for Tina's own family.
It seems to be a mystery how she can walk out the door 1 minute and just be gone the next.
There were genuine hopes of a breakthrough in March 2018 as the first anniversary of Tina Satchwell's disappearance approached. Gardaí began a search of a 40-acre wood in Castlemartyr, 20 kilometres from Youghal.
Superintendent Pascal Sheehy from RTE News. Are you looking for a body here?
What we are looking here today is evidence in relation to the investigation into the disappearance of Tina Satchwell.
But despite almost 2 weeks of searching, nothing of evidential value was found. The real breakthrough didn't come until October 2023. Richard Satchwell was arrested on suspicion of Tina's murder. Their house in Youghal was sealed off and searched.
Yesterday evening, the Garda Technical Bureau team discovered
what are believed to be human remains.
This was the end for Richard Satchwell's lies and deceit, and the beginning of the process of grief for her family. Pascal Sheehy, RTE News, Cork.
Our legal affairs correspondent Orla O'Donnell joins us now. Orla, what happens next for Richard Satchwell?
Well, on Wednesday there'll be a sentence hearing in this case, Sharon. Mr Justice Paul McDermott has no discretion in this case. He must impose the mandatory sentence of life in prison. But before he does that, he will hear victim impact evidence from Tina Satchwell's family. Now, you heard there earlier Sarah Howard saying the way she was portrayed in this trial was not true, was not a true reflection of the way she was. And there's no doubt they'll want to set the record straight, and they'll want to illustrate to the judge the profound effect her loss has had on them.
Orla, are there questions for the Gardaí as a result of this case?
Well, the most obvious question is why wasn't Tina Satchwell found earlier? And this is something that Richard Satchwell's defence counsel, Brendan Grehan, zeroed in on in his cross-examination of the various Garda witnesses in this case. His point being that if the body had been found earlier, there would have been better pathology evidence which might have shown how exactly Tina Satchwell died, and he said might have been to the benefit of his client. The questions, I suppose, are why wasn't the house in Grattan Street dug up in 2017? Why weren't building contractors brought in? Why wasn't a cadaver dog brought in at that stage? And also, why weren't electronic devices which were seized in 2017, why does it appear that they weren't analysed in some cases until 2021? Now, Superintendent Anne-Marie Toomey, who took over the Garda investigation, said she couldn't account for the thoughts or beliefs of the previous investigating team in terms of what they did or didn't do. Mr Grehan said obviously the person mainly responsible for the fact that Tina Satchwell's body was not found earlier was Richard Satchwell. But he said the failures of the Garda investigation should not be swept under the carpet. And he said what a different case it could have been if everything had been done as it could have been. Now, this evening, a spokeswoman for An Garda Síochána said because the case is still before the courts, they could not comment, they cannot give any comment on the investigation. Sharon.
Legal affairs correspondent Orla O'Donnell, thank you.
Returning now to the guilty verdict on Richard Satchwell, we're joined in studio by Prime Time's Barry Cummins. Barry, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Now, you interviewed Richard Satchwell several times after he claimed his wife disappeared. What did you make of him at that time?
Well, I met him over a number of months. First of all, I met him in the house in Youghal. Later, he was in my car. We went for walks along the pier. We were in the park in Fermoy. We also had an interview in a hotel in Fermoy as well. But I think the first meeting in the house is the one where I got my first impressions of him. He didn't maintain eye contact with me on that first interview, but it was a long interview, and I was there at his invitation. I was in the front room, in the sitting room, and we were filming there for I think 2 hours we spent in that house. My impressions were he was a man alone. He was a man with 2 dogs and the parrot. Valentine was there as well. He was showing me all these belongings of Tina's where I would say time had stood still. He was showing me nail varnish, photographs of Tina, clothes she had bought at the car boot sale the day before she disappeared. So all these belongings, but no Tina. And even when I then went in the car, obviously we were looking out the window, so we weren't making eye contact. But later on in the other meetings, he was looking at me pretty straight on and still telling me the same story, that Tina had upped and left, as he described it, and had taken 26. Well, I didn't disbelieve him, I suppose, in that I kept... I was very conscious Gardaí had searched the house. I knew that he had already been asked directly, you know, Gardaí believe you're a suspect in this case. He'd taken the question many a time and hadn't really answered it, except to say it had annoyed him or he'd had a good moan about it. But I was looking at him thinking that this is a man making public appeals, very much in the glare, and still talking. And every time I met him, he would say something new. So I felt that there was more to him, but I never closed my mind off that there might be some other answer. Now,
your interviews and several other media interviews were played during the course of the trial. What sort of effect did they have in terms of affecting the course of the trial, do you think?
I think they showed Richard Satchwell in the sense of speaking about Tina in particular ways and spinning particular stories at different times. And in amongst that, there may be some truth, but we now know there are many, many lies. And I think it would have been something the jury would have weighed up, that it's his right not to give evidence in his own defence. He did not give evidence, but his voice, his face, his demeanour in the months after Tina disappeared, they were very evident through those media interviews from RTE, from TV3 as it was at the time, and some local radio as well. And he seemed to court the broadcast. He used to talk about the press as if they were the print media. Now, he spoke to one or two in the print media, but didn't seem to like other print journalists, but seemed to like the radio television end of things. Perhaps he felt he could control his narrative better, and he certainly had a story that he tried to stick to.
Yeah. Now, as you say, he chose not to give evidence, but his voice was heard. But of course, and obviously, his wife's voice wasn't heard.
No, it wasn't. And I think what struck me was the way he would talk about Tina. They met when she was 17. And he said to me in the first interview that he said to his brother, before he ever spoke to Tina, he said to his brother, "I'm going to marry her." And so he did. And I think that is something we can all reflect on in terms of 2.5 years after he met her, they were married. Tina comes from a large and loving family. And they were living in Fermoy, herself and Richard Satchwell. She had a support network there. But then in 2016, May 2016, the couple moved to Youghal and they became further isolated. They had their 2 dogs and the parrot, but Tina was isolated there. She didn't drive herself and Richard was everywhere. And they wouldn't have spent a day apart in the lead up to her disappearance. And I think that we can see that her family have spoken out, the Dingovans have spoken out today about Tina, whose voice was not really heard during the trial. And
finally, Barry, I mean, the obvious question is how it is possible that her body wasn't discovered for 6.5 years.
Well, it wasn't the correct search that was done, and it was described as a thorough search, and it was thorough for what the Gardaí were searching for. They had a warrant for assault causing harm, suspected assault causing harm, so they had done this luminol search where they were looking for blood inside the house. They didn't lift the floors, they didn't pull apart the walls, they didn't do what they later did in 2023, and what we can all see should have been done in 2017. And it is a fact that I'm reflecting that I was in that house in November of that year. I knew the Gardaí had searched that house. I didn't think too much about it, other than perhaps Tina might be in the water or in a forest or elsewhere. I, in my own mind, had put her away from that house.
OK, Barry, thank you very much. I know you have a full programme on Prime Time on Tuesday, and you can also hear more on the Satchwell verdict from Barry and from our legal affairs editor, Orla O'Donnell, on the latest episode of the RT News Behind the Story podcast, which is available now.